Hello, everyone. I am really happy that you are here with me. Before we just start things off, we need to make a quick check. Let me know whether you can hear me, see me, and that video, audio, everything works fine. Just type it on the chat that I will see that you can hear me and see me as well. Okay. I see that everything is good. Already see like you have started introducing to each other. So it will be great to hear also from where are you joining us today. For us in Poland, it's like the middle of the day, but I know that for some of you, it might be a different time zone. So it will be nice to just know from where you are joining us. Also, at the very beginning, I have to mention that there might be some kind of the time lag between you actually typing something to me and I see it. So I will try to answer all of your questions. Don't hesitate to just drop your questions, concerns on the chat. But keep in mind that this synchronization might be a little bit laggy. So I think that we can start. So let me first introduce myself. So I'm Mateusz Stefańczyk, and I am Google developer expert in Angular. On daily basis, I work in the House of Angular. As name suggests, in House of Angular, we are just strongly focused on the Angular. We are doing some Angular consulting, code audits, provide ready-to-operate teams. So everything was related to Angular development, actually. Yeah, but we are also strongly beloved with Angular as a framework and Angular as a community. So that's why we are running our own community as well, which is called Angular Love. And Angular Love is the place for all Angular lovers. So initially it was blog. We started with blogging really valuable in-depth content for Angular developers. But right now we also started not right now, but recently, since some time, we started organizing also various gatherings, meetup, and we are just starting with another series of meetups, which is called Angular Camp. We are starting with Angular Autumn Camp, which will be a series of 3 meetups. I will have a chance to attend on 2 of them. With great speakers alongside me, like Fanis, which is also Google developer expert, and a lot of other great speakers. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at the link, which is right now at the chat. You can register here and just be with us. I think that's everything in terms of introducing the stuff and starting the stuff. And we can go right now directly to the presentation. So at the beginning, we need to mention like you're not alone. And this is for the people who are extremely confused with the stuff that's going right now in Angular around the signals, even though that the signals are pretty long with us already, but the new APIs and like we cannot say like the final stuff is already there. So signals aren't replacement for RxJS, someone says. Just swap BehaviorSubject for the signals, or just okay, yeah. You have mastered RxJS, but suddenly Angular team says you should use the signals. Signals are the new reactive primitive right now, and so on. Also, you might hear like your interview is like going great. You are just experienced Angular developer, which is working with Angular for a lot of years, but you are not so keen on in the signals, and suddenly someone start asking you in-depth knowledge regarding the signals and so on. I think that are some really real case scenarios, because right now there might be a little confusion for those who has been in Angular for years and have some maybe a little bit older projects where they on daily basis work strongly with RxJS. For these newcomers, it also might be confusing because they are starting some course, workshop, whatever, and they are not sure, okay, should I learn RxJS? Should I learn signals? where I find job, whether my project will use RxJS or the signals. So yeah, this situation might not be perfect, but we will try to clarify it a little bit. We'll see that these two can live like alongside, and then how to proceed with this learning path as well. What I want to mention also, what was extremely helpful and important for us, that before this meeting, we have sent some survey to you, and 161 developers take part of it. So I'm really, really thankful for all of you for spending your time to just provide us with the feedback. You give us a lot of information, what you are interested in, what you struggle with, and some of the top concerns were signals versus RxJS versus NgRx, which one choose and when, how migrate existing code from the signals or from the RxJS to the signals, I guess, and how do signals work with forms. So also this is kind of the missing part of this entire signals API, which will be probably fulfilled soon in the upcoming version. Right now we have only the preview of the forms, but yeah, we expect and we have the hope that it will be a part of upcoming Angular release, but we will see. But definitely the forms are the missing part there. So we will try to answer some of these questions with some practical examples. So what we will discuss today, we will make some introduction to the signals, very basic one, what are the signals, why they matter, and so on. Try to clear this confusion between RxJS and the signals. We'll make some small demo showing Signal Store in action in scope of some small application called Shopping Cart. And at the very end, we'll discuss the signal forms. I will show you some 4 key, most basic patterns you need to know when you're just starting working with the forms, and like everyone will met when working with the signal forms, right? So the 4 most crucial and basic patterns we need to know when we are starting with the forms. Okay, and by the end, we will have the Q&A session. But also, if during the presentation you will see something, drop your question. Hopefully, I will not forget about it. Sometimes I might also pick these questions when I am talking, because I see your chat, our chat at live, so that might happen as well. Yes, I can code repo. I think I can share with you, but I will need to expose this code because right now this code which I will be presenting is part of my code I am doing with the people during my Modern Angular workshop. I will discuss with you that one as well by then. So we'll need to get this piece which I am utilizing during this webinar and share with you. So that shouldn't be the problem. Okay, so what are the signals? And we can think about the signal as smart variable that automatically notify Angular when they change. What the Angular documentation says, that signal is a wrapper around the value that can notify interested consumers whenever its value change, right? So we are just wrapping the value with signal. It became reactive, and whenever right now someone will consume, by consume we mean use this, and is also like part of this entire Angular reactivity, it will be notified that the signal value changed, right? So our templates or other signals, they are automatically notified that value of our signal has changed. So it's reactive primitive for managing the state, managing the value of some properties. It's automatically trigger the change detection, so we don't need to manage it manually as we had to do in some scenarios when working with on-push change detection and asynchronous value changes, well, especially when we have been changing the value in asynchronous context, like inside of the subscription or and so on. So there was like a few scenarios we had to utilize the manual trigger. They are synchronous by default, and they are composable and efficient. So by default, there is like great efficiency coming behind the signals. Of course, if we use them properly, because as everything, we can use it in some wrong manner, and yeah, they will not be efficient in this case. So simply declaring the signal is just simple like that. We import the signal function, then we utilize it by assigning to the particular variable with initial value. So as in our case, we initialize some count. We read it by calling it. So it's more like getter function. So we call it by initiating the function call. I know like the getter functions in the past had like very bad opinion, but we shouldn't be afraid of that with signals. It's a completely different way it works under the hood. We can update it by calling the set function, which directly override the value, or update, which allow us to create a new value based on the previous one, right? So those are like most simple signal APIs we will use in majority of our apps. Creating, reading, and actually updating in the very basic scenarios. So as we can compare it, like how it looks to initialize the traditional variable to the signals is like the single difference is that we need to invoke this signal function and then update it based on these functions it's exposed to us, like set and update. But thanks to that, we are always in sync with Angular change detection. What will happen with the code at the left side, even though like both of these variables are extremely simple and you might think, okay, I don't need signal, I will do it based on some traditional const, traditional variable, no need to use the signals there, that if this component on left side will be with on push change detection, your changes to the count will not be detected. Here at the right side, you are like safe in all scenarios. You don't have to even bother about the change detection. And that's the entire key, even on that simple things like creating the most basic variable and just then updating and playing around with it. Okay, so should I use signals or RxJS? And we have to keep in mind that even though they have like some overlaps on each other, and there is a lot of things that one cover another, and then they just doing exactly same things, there is a scenarios when you want to use one or other, and they are not like competing there or just fighting against each other, but they can live in sync, right? So when we set them side by side, so signals are synchronous by default, observables are asynchronous, one of them are push-based, other are pull-based, signals automatically clean up. So whenever we read the value, utilize the value in scope of the template or the component side, we don't have to, I don't know, unsubscribe from it or something like that. With observables, we know like managing the subscriptions over the years had like the multiple patterns. Right now we have the dedicated operator even for that one. So who works with Angular for a long time knows that managing the subscriptions was kind of the thing. And it wasn't always obvious and easy for some of us, especially at the beginning of journey with Angular. So observables have extremely huge power with complex operators. When in compared to the signals, they mostly do some simple compositions, but there is no operators by default like switch map, the bounce, and so on, distinct until change. So all of these operators, as we as Angular developers know. Stream-based data flow, value-based reactivity, and memory safe. We already mentioned it earlier. So as I mentioned, they are not enemies, they are complementary tools. And from my experience so far, I don't say like it's always same for everyone, but what I have noticed in terms of both of these tools, like that RxJS are still the thing for event streams, complex async operations where we need to utilize some of the operators, time-based operations like the bounce, throttle. So even if we see over the community some implementations of the bounce in signals, under the hood they are using actually the RxJS and some advanced operators. Okay, so that was already said. So signals are great for component state, the right values, form state, which is coming, right? We mentioned it at the very beginning, and HTTP requests with the resource API. But here with this resource API, I will mention a little bit more on the upcoming slides, because I also have some mixed feeling about this API and how strongly we can utilize it in the real world scenarios. So if we take a look at this decision matrix, so when you're managing the component state right now, I think you should go with the signals. Here in scope HTTP request, I mentioned resource API with the question mark. So I will come back to this question mark at the end. Complex async flows, RxJS, so switch map, red tree, all kind of the operators we know are there, and we can perform any kind of the complex asynchronous flow with RxJS. Form state, managing the forms, I believe it will be signal forms for sure, which is upcoming. WebSocket, streams, RxJS, computed value, signals, and global store or general store in the application. Just in my opinion, the signal store from NgRx team. So that's it. What I have said, like, I'm not sure regarding the resource, because the resource API allow us to only perform get operation, especially HTTP resource, right? So we can get the data, but we don't have mutations there by default. And when I was thinking like about my real world scenarios, like how often I have to only read the value, like in majority of cases, I also have to mutate that data, and I have to mutate data. I actually need to expose my HTTP client, perform old-fashioned requests based on the HTTP client, which is based on the observables. So if I have to like implement it for the post, delete, put, I mean the update, so is it really worth for me to introduce some kind of the new pattern to my code base as a HTTP resource just to fetch new data? That was my confusion, whether it's really worth it and whether that's not the perfect pattern for some more basic applications, but in some real world scenarios, whether it's really worth or whether even people will be using it in such advanced cases. Also, that might be a question for you. What are your thoughts about the resource API and such an advanced scenarios when you really need to manage your entity by covering the entire CRUD operations? So migration or just synchronization between those two words is extremely simple. So here, first of all, we will take a look how our code looks before the signals and after the signals. So what we have been usually doing, we have been creating some new behavior subject, exposing it as observable to the outer world, usually through the services to our components. And then we have been calling the next whenever we update it. Of course, entire reactivity cycle was performed, our components has been updated, and it was working mostly like that. With the signals, it's extremely simple, much simpler than it was in the past. So we create the signal, we create the method to update this signal, we update it, and everything will happen automatically, right? So no memory leaks, no like complete in the ng on destroy or some other this kind of the operations, and definitely less code and much more readable in my opinion. So if we need to, because most of us have like both of them right now in the project, like a lot of stuff in the past has been done in the RxJS, and probably no one is going like to rewrite it completely from the scratch. But we also want to like play around with these latest patterns. So there is like RxJS interop, which allow us to move between the signals and observables to signals. So if you want to migrate or just cast our signal to observable, we can utilize to observable. And if you want to create the signal from the observable, there is dedicated function to signal. So extremely simple way of casting stuff. Okay, so it's not like signals introduce only the signal function, because it's created also a lot of like utility APIs around the signals that we can utilize, and one of them is computed. And computed is kind of the signal that is derived from the utilized signal. So automatically tracks dependencies and memorizes results. What does it mean? That when we utilize in scope of the computed function any kind of the signal, this computed function will be triggered whenever it changes, right? So that's what I mentioned at the very beginning, that signal is a wrapper around the value that notify interested consumers when that value changes. So that's the case for the computed, that computed as a consumer of the signal, we will be notified whenever signal used in scope of the computed change. So if signal in scope of the computed change, the computation will be retriggered, recomputed, recalculated, and value will be updated. And everything like happened under the hood. We don't have to bother retrigger manually or something, right? We write it once, and whenever dependencies change, it will be retriggered. So in our case, it will automatically recalculate the total whenever the items change, and same to the items count. So whenever items change, it will be recalculated. The another API is the effect, and the effect is also very similar to the computed, with those different that effects are not returning any kind of the value. So it will trigger whenever the signal used in scope of the effect change, but it will never return any kind of the value. Also, what is extremely important, that if we don't want to pass some injectors to the effect, it has to be initialized in scope of the injection context. And kind of the injection context is a constructor, for example, right? So in our example, we can see that we perform some analytics tracks whenever user ID change. So this function will be re-triggered whenever user ID change. And we have to keep in mind that the effects are a great thing for like logging, analytics, some DOM updates like initializing third-party chart library or local storage synchronization. But we should avoid here rather DOM manipulation or some kind signal synchronization, like synchronizing signals between each other and so on. So kind of the sign for us that we are utilizing the effect in the wrong way is the scenario in which we are just reading the signal in scope of the effect, or using the signal in scope of the effect, but actually we don't need it in scope of the FSX. So we perform the read operation, but we, for example, not assign it anywhere, or we assign, but we don't use this assigned value. And we only need it for the purpose of re-triggering the effect when this particular signal change. So yeah, thank you, Yaroslav. Yes, we can perform untracked in scope of the effect. So that's another utility function, right? If we actually want to read some value in scope of the effect, but we don't want to track this value. What means that we don't want to track this value? We don't want our effect to be re-triggered whenever that value change. And the last and most recent utility around the signals are linked signals, which actually resolve the issue of synchronizing two properties between each other, right? So there is an example of display name, but also the great example of this kind of the need are, let's say, selected items. So we might have the select component, right? And let's say we have 10 options and we track selected index to know which index is actually selected. But we want to reset that selected index whenever the possible options in scope of the select change. And link signal is the perfect kind of the utility because it works like computed, right? So it will recompute whenever the source change because we can define the source there. So in our scenario, the source is like initial value. And then based on the uppercase input, it will perform the uppercase operation or return the initial value for us. Also, so in case of like our pagination, it will be that our source will be the select options, I mean the select set pagination, select options, and the index will be 0, right? So whenever the select options change, the computation will update the index to be 0. But what is also great about the linked signal in compared to the computed, that we can directly update the value. So with computed, we cannot update the value that is created using the computed function, but with linked signal, we can directly set the new value. But we need to keep in mind that this newly set value will be overwrite whenever the source of our link signal change and the computation function will be triggered. So I mentioned like form fields with initial values at the table derived state, but I think it's actually not true anymore when we will have the signal forms, right? Okay, so let's take a look at our live demo right now. I will reorganize there, so give me a second because I need to change the screens and so on. Okay, it's actually here. It's up and running. Okay, and where is our application? Okay, so right now you can see our application from the shopping cart workshop. As I said, I just created the dedicated route for this webinar. This is the app we utilize, we use, and we work with during our workshops, where we have the various levels of experience and then how hard is the dedicated task, and whether we just working with signals, control flows, standalone components, or just the signal forms, because we also recently have been covering like the signal forms. So focusing on the way we can manage the state, I will go first to the route which is called RxJS. And that's the very simple cart management component, right? So we can add the items, we can remove the items, we can increase quantity, decrease everything pretty smoothly updates for us, as we can see. So simple like that. Let's take a look how it looks like in the code. So if we take a look at the RxJS components, so probably nothing to look at in terms of the HTML. But despite of the fact that, right, yeah, we do it on the RxJS, right? So we need to utilize an async and so on. So all of these APIs that are known for us, we need dedicated RxJS service. And as I showed you, we need to create like the items, then expose these items as observables. And this is old way of managing the state, where we like need to call the next to perform an update on our items. So it's I wouldn't say it's like bad, right? But it's not the simplest one we can have with today's standards, especially when we are talking about working with RxJS. So this is two things that are redundant right now, like creating the behavior subject and exposing it over as observables. Calling the next function also was kind of the confusing at the very beginning, especially for newcomers, and all of this kind of the stuff. Otherwise, it's nothing that will be not known for us. Also, like creating these computed values, right? So these derived values from other values always enforce us to use kind of the operators over the pipe and so on. So of course, this scenario is extremely simple. We are only managing the card, but in some more advanced scenarios, it was not that smooth and easy. And there is probably nothing fancy, that we are just injecting this kind of the service and utilizing it in scope of our components. So let's take a look at exactly same implementation, but done with the signals. So something you might notice by the first look is that we are just utilizing it, reading it, like calling the functions, right? But actually we are not calling the function. This is the way we are reading the value from the signals. So it's pretty simple, would say, very similar to what we have, with those different that we don't need any kind of the async or subscriptions over there. We simply have as well like a service which contains some entire logic related to managing the state. We can see it's also extremely simple. We can also expose if we don't want like someone to override our items from the outside world. We can expose them only our item as read-only, so our items will not be override from outside. So you can update our items only by calling the function. And overall, I think it looks simpler, but maybe it's not that visible in these simple scenarios, right? So again, we have the declaration of our values. We create the computed properties. So those things which were kind of the RxJS operator-based new variables right now are computed. So we create computed values utilizing the computed function. And we simply say it returns an items by increasing the price with quantity and so on. And then it will be triggered whenever items change. And what we will do right now, we will try to implement very similar thing with Signal Store, so that you will see how we can implement state management in scope of the Signal Store. What I'm thinking is like, we have to keep in mind that this kind of the scenarios are pretty simple, so it might not be that visible, but hopefully you will already see some kind of the benefits of using it actually in scope of that small application. So also maybe what I would like to show you, okay, maybe no, it's not needed actually. I have like the entire implementation next to me if I will just struggle somewhere, but I think we can go like from completely scratch. So we will create the new card store and utilize it in like shop your card signal service. So let's see how it will go. If I will have some struggles, I will take a look at the source code. Okay, so first of all, we need to create like new file. How we call it, like shopping cart store, let's it be. Okay, what I will do right now, I will copy the interface of my cart store because I don't want to write it from the scratch. This one I will comment because I will show you how we can also synchronize the new signal forms with the Signal Store, right? Okay, and how we can create our store is simple like that. We call it like card store, and we utilize the Signal Store function. We will provide it for root. Maybe we don't need to, but we can. So I will show you like we can define where it should be provided, because a lot of people thinking like whether it's only a component store or it can be utilized also globally. So you can define where you provide it, right? So we can say it should be provided in root as like usual, like we do with services and so on, but we can also like skip it. What else we can define it? So whether our state should be protected. And it's also somehow important, and it's something I have mentioned when I have been discussing these card items, that they are as read-only, right? So with our state, I believe it's also good practice to not allow someone to update the state from the outside of the state, right? So it's by default protected, so we don't have to set it, but if we would like to, we can define that it should not be protected, and we like allow people to update it from the outside. Okay, so let's start simply with creating the initial state. So first we define what is the state. We can say it should be type of card state, and we define what are the initial values. So our items will be an empty array, filtered items will be empty array as well, and loading will be false at the very beginning. And already we can, I didn't define it. Yeah, let's do it like that. So I can try to replace it in scope of the, where it was there. Can inject our store. It's not, okay. Let me see what we have to mimic, like maybe we'll not cover everything, or some of the things I will copy paste, but I would like to show you how we can arrange our states utilizing the Signal Store API, because the NgRx Signal Store exposes some dedicated functions. As you can see, it's like done in the functional manner. Yes, I believe like the Signal Store is kind of the replacement for component store. I mean, like if you're starting right now, I will use the Signal Store over the component store. Thank you, Alex. So I think like you don't have better person to ask about the Signal Store than actually Alex. So what I wanted to mention is that it built on the functional programming fundamentals, and we are just creating the stuff by invoking the functions. We have to think about it and like stacking one function above another, right? So it's like building something from the Lego blocks where you put one bricks above another, and it's like creating your entire building. So for me, it is how I think about the Signal Store and how I'm working with the Signal Store. So what we can do is like we can create their methods by just simply calling with methods function, which will accept here as a parameter. We have an access to our store. We might also have an access to dedicate the defined properties from the store, like only the items. And here we are just returning the functions we exposing from our card store. And for us, these functions will be something like add item, which will be the function accepting an item, right? So it accepts the item, which is type card item. And we will like patch our state. Okay, we will take the entire store there for the purpose of this, but wanted to show you that. Okay, and like items, we have items, right? Items. So items will be like the store items. plus this item, let's say, or something like that, right? So we can perform this kind of the updates simply like that there. What is the problem? Okay, nice. So it's also fully type safe. So what happens there that I forgot to invoke the signal read. So we need to do it like that, right? Because everything which is in scope of our store, I mean like the initial state, are the signals. So with this simple case, we created the method to add the items to our state. Another very useful utility function is with props, which allow us to create properties in scope of our signal state. It's also accept the store or just dedicated properties. And here we can create whatever property we need actually in scope of our store. So in our case, it was something like total, right? Which was computed, and that was computed value derived from the, sorry, I need to do it like that. So it was total, right? And we create the computed, which will return some item, store items, and we perform there our computation and entire map. We'll need to take a look because I don't want to like spend time right now to showing it. Also, what else we can have like quantity and some other, and it's great because we can create there like computed, but also we can create some other properties like maybe loaded will be linked signal or something like that, right? So we can also create it there. It's not limited to the computed only, but all of this kind of the signal-based API we can utilize in scope of the with props, and it's extremely useful. I found it very useful when I was playing around with some utilities from NgRx extensions, something like that. And I wanted to have the property which is synchronizing my query params. So let me take a look. Maybe I will show you. So it's extremely useful set of library of the utility functions in scope of the Angular. And I was utilizing some injector utilities probably in scope of my signal store, something like that, dedicated for query params. Okay, inject query params, right? So even if I have something like inject query params and I want to have it as part of my store, I can easily create it in scope of the with props, right? So it's not limited only to computed link signal, but you can define there some other properties as well. So that's it. That's it. Also, what I would like, okay, so maybe I will right now copy a little bit of my working scenario, because otherwise it will take us extremely long time. We'll discuss this one. So thinking, let me wait a second because I have some trouble with Windows. So here we have like the most basic scenarios of creating the state with the signal store. Right now, I will show you some more already ready to use and implemented scenario with my entire code. So as you can see, it's like not differentiate a lot. We have the car state. We have with props where we count the total. We can count their like filtered items. I will show you soon. Item count, whether like the array is empty, whether it has kind of the items. We can utilize the computer to track and count the taxes, which might be part of our business logic. Also, we can count the final price of our card, right? So all of these things we can define in scope of the with props. Then we have our with methods, where we will rather define all kinds of the methods regarding manipulating and operating on our entities. So we can define their like add item, remove item, update quantity, like increment quantity, and those all are like simple like that. They are not different than actually defining the function in scope of your component, I would say. That it's removed simply, like we patch our state, we say that the item with specific ID should be replaced and filtered out from our store items. But also what is extremely great in terms of the, I will comment it out because that's something I want to show you. So let me see it for the line. That's my pseudocode I have done when I was playing with this demo in the morning. Wait a second. It's fine. Okay, it's showing I'm not using. So, okay, so another great thing, and I think one of the crucial things in terms of the NgRx Signal Store are the custom features. So it's something huge for me, especially when you have some reusable logic you want to use across of the various states you have in scope of your application. So let's take a look at the beginning like that, what it's built. Okay. So let's say we want to have in some of our states in scope of the application possibility to synchronize our current state data with local storage, right? We want to synchronize the defined state managements or states with our local storage. So if we take a look at our current application, I have the dedicated route for Signal Store, which is like another implementation of exactly same card, but based on the Signal Store. I have added some items in scope of the card, and whenever I refresh, I'm just losing the card state, right? We need to keep our card in scope of the local storage. And how simple I can, I can do it. I can utilize created by me with local storage custom NgRx store feature. So adding this one to my application, I will show you what are the results of that. That whenever I add right now some item and refresh the page, oh, it should be restored, but actually it's not. That's something. Let's see why it's happened. Okay, so we have the troubles like it's always with type coding. But okay, what I want to show you is fact that in scope of the NgRx signals, you can predefine reusable pieces of these building blocks, and you call it like signal store feature. So if we take a look at the, let's say, method, it's with methods is kind of the signal store feature, right? And we can create also our custom signal store features, which we can then utilize in scope of our applications. So give me a second. Okay, that's the problem. I know why it was not synchronizing, because I uncommented in the wrong place. So let's take a look right now whether it will work. So I have the empty cart, and right now lets me add some items, refresh the page. Okay, and we see I have it synchronized with my state management, right? It's being synchronized from my utility custom store feature card with local storage. And by creating this kind of the custom store feature, I can create like completely new state, like test state, Signal Store, and I can utilize it there. And it will be my test store. And right now, whenever some kind of the data or something change in scope of this storage, it will be already synchronized, right? So we can create like plenty of this kind of reusable utility custom store features and invoke them across of the various states. Also, like if you have some logging system or you have some analytics, you can create like with analytics or with logging, and it will automatically track and perform the entire analytics related logic by only applying the custom store feature. And it's not differentiate much from actually creating the store with those different that here we have to return like the signal store feature, which is dedicated function from the NgRx signals. We can define what kind of the state it expect from the above, because as I have mentioned to you, it's like the stacking the Lego, right? So we can define that with logging, expect the specific Lego to be put on it from the above, right? So we said that, okay, it's working with everything, every state that have the type of cart item state. And then we can perform actually everything we can do with the normal signal, right? So there is no different. We can there like use with hooks, with methods, with computed, like with props, and so on. So there is no difference between actually creating the state and signal store in terms of what kind of the utility functions coming from the NgRx signals we can use to compose this reusable feature. Let's take a look at the local storage. It's extremely simple, as you see, because what we can do, we define what is the expected state. We already agreed, like the expected state is the cart item states, and we, on initialization of our store with hooks on init, which will be applied to our store whenever we utilize the signal store feature, we check whether local storage is defined. We verify whether in scope of the local storage exists some item on the predefined key. If it exists, we patch our state and we set this value we derive from the local storage as our items. If not, we log some error and so on. And we also define the effect that whenever the store items change, update the local storage, right? So as we mentioned, effect will trigger whenever the value reading scope of the effect change. Here we are like reading the store items. We know that items will exist because we defined what is the type of our state at the very top. And we read it value, right? So whenever that value change, it will be directly populated to the local storage. And on this story, we log something. It's redundant, right, actually, but to just show. And that's why if I don't know, add an item, refresh the page, it's persisted. So that's kind of the very simple scenario of syncing like the current store with the local storage, utilizing the custom store features, which are extremely powerful in real world scenarios and some business cases, because also like we defined like with local storage, but for you it might be in your business application like with taxes count or something like that, where you will define some business rules like where you applying the taxes, and it will expose to you the methods that count these taxes, and you will mark it like not editable, right? So whoever edit this, you will be, I don't know, you will fire him, like I'm joking, but this way, and you can then utilize it in scope of multiple stores. Okay, so by the end of this demo, let's show me how you can simply create the form utilizing the new Signal Forms APIs. I'm not the expert, right, in domain-driven design, but I don't even say like you storing, but it's enough like you utilizing, you calling these functions or just operates on these models. It's always the question how to properly manage your models in domain-driven design and so on. But I believe like in front end, these requirements cannot be so tight as there are on the back end. But I am not the expert, but I believe you will have to manage your domain somewhere, and the store is probably the one of the most down layer you can do it. Maybe better than actually component or something. Okay, so let's see how we can utilize our forms in scope of our simple application. So the forms, the signal-based forms, we simply initialize by calling the form function, and as initial value, we need to pass the signal, right? So it's simple like that. We call the form, and we define what is the initial value. So I believe like much simpler than actually creating the reactive forms. We define that our filter form will have the query property, and we will attach it to the input. And how we attach it to the input is like applying the control on the input element and pointing out to the filter form query field state. So right now, our input is connected with our query, and whenever we type to the input, it will update our item. But if that's the filter and we have some kind of the cart implementation, we probably would like to synchronize our filter with store. And Signal Store has extremely nice function for this purpose, which works similarly to the effects. It's called signal method that will be retriggered whenever passed signal as a parameter change, right? So we utilize our signal method, which is accept as a type string, to update our query in scope of state whenever form value change. And then this query is utilized in scope of the filter items computed. We check whether query have some length. If not, we returns the items. But if it have, we return, we filter the items from the items collection, right? So we filter our items based on the query from items. So again, we simply create like signal method in scope of our signal store. We call it with the signal from newly created form called like sync query. And right now it will automatically synchronize our query with state. And whenever we right now type something or look for some item, you can see this query is populated to our state thanks to this synchronization. It updates our query, where our query being updated, our computed called filtered items being triggered. It check whether query have some length. If yes, it just filter items based on the name from items. So that's it from the demo. Like if you have some questions, you can drop them. If not, I go ahead with the rest of the presentation. Okay, so we took a look at our demo where we utilize the Signal Store for managing the simple state of the shopping cart component. We also discussed how we can synchronize the signal-based forms with the NgRx Store, for example. It's extremely simple and powerful in my opinion, and it's like smooth. That's what the signals actually does for us, that everything seems to be so smooth. Okay, so right now by the end, let's discuss the signal forms, so the future of Angular forms, so something we are waiting for, and also the missing graal in the Angular signal-based API, I believe, because right now whoever works with some reactive forms know what kind of the nightmare it is to just synchronize the reactive forms with your signals, with the signal-based inputs, and so on and so on. So we are waiting for that one to finally have everything done in scope of the signals. So we have at the left side initialization of traditional reactive forms, and the right side like more simple signal-based forms. And as we can see, by first look, both of them for me, in terms of the readability, are great. Maybe I would say, like, as a readability, maybe these reactive forms were more readable in compared to the signal forms, but there is no big difference, but a lot of nice possibilities with signal forms. Like, there is no big difference in terms of readability for me, right? For me, the left side is readable, and for what kind of the properties the dedicated validators are applied. For in the right side, I also like get used to this approach that as a first parameter, we pass the signal, which is an initial value for our form, and then as a second parameter, we pass a function where we just declare what kind of the validation we apply to the particular. Yeah, can you zoom? Right now, I believe that will be the problem. Okay, let's see, because maybe I can zoom in here. No, it's not reacting here. Interesting. Let me see whether there is some kind of the zoom. I don't see. Okay, so I will change it as part of the. But it might not be that nice visible. Let's see. Smaller. Okay, it's overlapped with my footer right now, but can you see it better, like the code right now? Because the code is like the most important right now for me. So again, as you can see, in terms of the readability, for me, both of them looks fine. Maybe this left side was more more readable in terms of what kind of the validators being applied to the particular properties, but this one is readable as well, and it's expand in front of us like a lot of possibilities in terms of defining what kind of the fields being required, because this is the simple one scenario, but we can define the dedicated schemas and so on, right? So we call like required, and we point like the form name, required form email, email form email, and so on, right? There is like, as it was in the past, the group of predefined validators from the Angular team, but also we can simply create our own. It's type safe, so as you can see, there is like no need for any kind of the casting or something like that. This also might be somehow confusing that we have to like double read first name and then actually its value. So we will see how this API evolve over the time, right? Because it's right now experimental. So we also have to keep it in mind, like it's not the final one. But something to which was gave us to play around. And right now, okay, let's leave it for now like that. I will change it. Maybe it's better. So again, some simple example of creating the new form with initial value. As I mentioned, the initial value must be the signal. Our signal contains properties like username, email, password, and then we apply the validators as a second parameter. So we had like required email, but we can see like the min length is also there. integration to the template. So as we saw in our demo, we are just passing our controls to the control directive like that, right? So we had like the form control name in the past. Right now we are just passing the control. We are pointing out which control is assigned to the particular input. Also, it has like more dedicated properties, like whether there are some errors, whether it's invalid, or maybe it's during the submission. So the submitting is also some kind of the nice pattern, which was reintroduced, I would say, in scope of these new signal forms. Let me go back a little bit. Because Angular provides us with dedicated onSubmit function, or just submit, which accepts the form and the asynchronous side effect as the second parameter. So what it does, because I take a look under no start with anymore. I don't know, maybe we'll need it, maybe we'll create some dedicated operator to have the start with. Coming back to the submit is that they prepared the dedicated function that does something what we have reduplicating, recreating multiple times over and over in our applications. And it's actually is like whenever we call the submit, it will automatically mark all fields as touch, validates the form, set the submitting status, call our asynchronous function, automatically handle some errors if they will be returned from the server here. We simply not calling like set errors or something like that. We just, in scope of this function, we just return an errors, and that's enough. They will be already populated to our form. That's submitting. Oh, it's already duplicated. Submitting to false. Okay, that's why, because it says it's false. Yeah, so I think it's great. What are your thoughts about it? Like share your feedback, because at the beginning I was confused, like what they created the submit function, and then I start looking deeper and deeper, and I see, okay, it's doing what we have been doing like manually over and over, like marking fields as touch, validate the form, setting the is loading, loaded, and then all this stuff is already covered by this function, or just setting the errors. So everything is done there under the hood. Of course, for some more flexible cases, we will probably avoid the submit from the Angular forms, but overall, it might be nice. Okay, so what we have covered, some signal bases. We introduce ourselves with the signal compute effects, linked signal, RxJS versus the signals, like where I see they can work each other, where I see like the RxJS still shining and so on. Shopping cart demo, migration strategy, implementing some simple state with the signal store, and signal forms deep dive, like these 4 patterns of like reading, creating, submitting, and so on in scope of this latest signal forms API. We didn't cover some like advanced signal form scenarios, like creating custom validators and so on, some signal store patterns, or some complete migration strategies. So if you would like to go deeper, I have like created a comprehensive workshop called Modern Angular Essentials. You can take a look at this workshop at our page, houseofangular.io/modernangular. We are just discussing there everything what is in scope of the signal fundamentals. So we go over the signals from the very, very beginning, from basics, some dependency graphs, some, let's say, algorithms that are done under the hood, because like synchronizing the signals and so on, it's not so easy and so obvious. So we discuss it during this workshop, we take a look at the Rx resource API. We have all of these exercises with hands-on, like 7 dedicated exercises to play around with the knowledge I share with you during this workshop. We discuss the control flow, because control flow is also like not only the syntax alignment, but a lot of things going under the hood, and it gains us with great performance improvements. And we take a look at the standalone components and modern DI with inject. We take a look how to migrate in safe way from the modules when you have really big applications. And in terms of the modern DI, we take a look how it's changed the way we inject our dependencies and how it led us to create plenty of awesome utilities like this one, inject query params, that we can utilize in scope of our applications. So if you will be interested, you can get to our page, press the buy button, and here get my ticket, which will redirect you directly to the Stripe page. And here you can fulfill some discount code, which I have dedicated for you. The discount, which is called Angular 50. If you type it there, you will get 50% discount. It's valid till 23 of October, so 9 days. Yeah, I'm right. 9 days left to utilize this discount. So I strongly encourage you, if you would like to deep dive deeper with me into the Signal, forms, state management, I strongly encourage you. And right now we can go to our Q&A session. So if you have some questions, just drop it on the chat and I will try to answer. There is no questions. Okay, I'll drink that. Thank you, Alex. I'm really happy like that you joined and you was there this entire time. It was a little bit stressful to talk about the NgRx signals in front of you, where you actually was there, but I saw you have done like the great work on the chat and answered like majority of questions. So thank you one more time. What I recommend to state shared across different components. I think like there is no simple answer for that one, but if they actually should share the exactly same state, it's fine. You also like, if you like the common state, I believe it's fine. But also like as showed you with this signal store, you can simply say like it's not providing root, and all of the injected instances of this store, we have like the brand new state to manage in separation, following exactly same logic, same methods, and so on, right? So up to the use case, but some common state, I believe, should be shared, like, and should be global. So if we have some, I don't know, car types, let's say, across of our app, and they are like only this set of the car types are available, then we should share it. Okay, I will show the comments because I forgot. I was reading and didn't showing. Okay, how long does the workshop discount last? It's till the 23 of October, so 9 days, right? Okay, sorry if you already talked about it, but how would you combine Signal Store with HTTP resource? So as I already mentioned, probably, I have the problem with this HTTP resource due to the fact that it's not exposing the mutations. So if I'm managing my state right now in scope of the NgRx Signal Store, I'm just calling directly the services, patching my state and so on. but I am not like utilizing the HTTP resource there at all. So yeah, but I saw there are like functions from the community, probably from Angular architects, like HTTP mutations and so on, that you can actually utilize mutations with HTTP resource. That might be kind of the nice. What I have to share with you, because I was talking with Angular core team member regarding whether there will be something like HTTP mutations or something like that, and they said it's only for read only, right? So there is no dedicated mutations and so on in plans. So they said, if you really want something, it's worth to invest your time as a team, create some utilities or reuse some utilities from the community to have the mutation done with HTTP resource. Yes, we'll get the recording of the workshop. It will be sent to you via an email. Can we get the repo source control link? Yes, I will. As I said at the beginning, I will have to like get it out of this workshop repository and we'll share with you. It might be a little bit like using the signals in interface property, but actually depends of the use case, right? If you need to have something as actually a signal that then is read somewhere else or something like that, why not? Is there some unit test utilities for signals? To be honest, I'm not exactly sure. What I am sure that writing the tests with the spectator is the simplest, very simple stuff, extremely simple, extremely pleasure. So I have not encouraged any kind of the issues, right? Writing the unit tests with the signals and like unit testing components or something, especially when I am using the spectator. What does you go to Angular folder structure for enterprise app look like? So as there was already discussed a little bit, we are trying to always like follow, I would call it like quasi domain driven pattern. So because I don't want to be questioned like this is not DDD and so on. So we always utilizing the NX for our architecture. I know it's like monorepo, but even though we have like the single application, we always are doing the NX there, and we are trying to cover kind of the architecture that we group the stuff into the libraries like the feature, data access, domain, UI, and integration in some more granular scenarios. But in majority of cases, it will be like feature UI shell, which is the entry point for the dedicated directory, some routing, and this kind of the stuff happening in the shell. Then we have like the data access. It's the place where we keep our state management, more global one, I mean, or just more dedicated for some feature, not very simple state management. Also here you can perform from there some requests, or if not, you create dedicated integration library where you keep your service, which is reaching out to the outside world, whether that's the WebSockets or REST client requests, you perform them from the integration, right? So NX with separation for libraries like feature, UI, shell, domain, data access, integration, and this kind of the stuff. It's more like depends per team, per project sometimes. To be honest, I'm not sure what we mean by that. Signal update card. Probably not, but maybe some of the people here on the chat will know. But you can also say what you would like to achieve by this structure. No, that wouldn't be the overkill, but I believe you can utilize this signal method, right? So this is kind of the replacement for effects in scope of the signal store. And then at the below you have like even advantages over the effect. Because at the first sight, signal store method might be the same as effect. And here you can guys read more, right? Like what are the differences and also how it's differentiate from the Rx method. Because Rx method is also massive and great utility in scope of NgRx signals. Essential stuff like linked signal was added in the later release of Angular. Are there more essential operations planned in making? To be honest, I'm not sure whether there is like more of this stuff planned. I'm like nothing I am aware of. Maybe this way regarding the fact that they are strongly focusing on Angular signal forms. I don't understand when it's better to use signal or observable. Like overall, right now, in majority of cases, it's probably better from various reasons, like from the fact that this became the standard. It's easier to read, easier to maintain, to use the signals. But there are actually the cases where you cannot, or it's extremely hard to do something with signals. So as I said, like whether that's the WebSockets or just some advanced async operations, you are not able to do it with the signals. Also, I mentioned like performing the post delete requests. They are all done with HTTP client, which is observable based, right? So they are still things you have to, or it's maybe better to do on observables, but like managing the state, especially in scope of the component, it's always like go with signals. If we'll like divide our application somehow, I would like to put where the signals, where the observables. So probably you will put signals to majority of the things, and you will left like the observables to managing the asynchronous operation, HTTP requests, WebSockets, and this kind of the stuff. Like managing your state, and then the rest of the stuff right now can be easily, smoothly, and well done with the signals. Okay, I see there is like no more. George's Zone.js will be deprecated from Angular in future. I believe it's already like not required, right? We are getting rid of Zone.js. So you don't have to use Zone.js. If there is no more questions, I want to mention by then that you will get some survey from us to get your feedback regarding the webinar. The recording will be sent to you. I remind you about our code Angular 50 for my workshop Modern Angular. I strongly encourage you to join us on, yes, becomes optional Zone.js. To join us on our Spring Camp. Yeah, so it will be great series of meetups where you can like learn a lot as well, and like from other experts. So really great series of meetings, and I hope you will be there with us. Yeah, and probably that's it. So have a nice day. Thank you for being with me today, and see you in upcoming events.